you can see it and you're like, there's something off about that.
It's just complete clickbait and nothing that's even true.
There's no content to it, there's no validity to it, and it's actually misinforming most football fans out there.
The pages are plentiful and their posts misleading, manufactured, or just plain made up. And while many Bills Mafia members are spotting the fakes or AI-generated mistakes,
I love a quarterback with 6 fingers, you know, really, it's just what we need for the team.
Others are not.
My parents sometimes will see things, and I bet they see things that they don't show me, where I'm like, yeah, no, that's not real. You shouldn't be listening to that. And same with like my grandparents too.
So there is a couple of things to pay attention to here.
These pages are not unique to Bills Mafia.
Bills Mafia Pride, Buffalo Cold Wind,
says UB Associate Professor Yotam Ophir, who studies misinformation big and small.
These images are designed specifically to attract our attention. They are targeting specific audiences. So there is a good chance that if you live in New York, you're going to get Buffalo Bills images. But if you live in Philadelphia, you're going to get the same images, but with Eagles kind of characters in them, right?
Take this example from the Bills' September 14th game against the New York Jets. Quarterback Josh Allen called this audible. Days later, the Blue Crew fan page claimed Allen was celebrating his grandmother. But Allen had already explained the real reason behind it.
We've got a nice little restaurant here in Orchard Park that, we frequented a lot last year.
There are hundreds, even thousands of other fake stories, with players paying off student debt, Steve Tasker making it to the Hall of Fame. Or how about this AI-generated attempt at Josh Allen saving a puppy in a mashed-up Patriots jersey?
In reality, you click on it and it's either fake, it's either garbage, or it's propaganda, right?
Well, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, has rules for fake accounts and misinformation well laid out. Ophir will tell you.
Problem is, Facebook and Meta in general are doing a pretty poor job screening and filtering these out. Maybe they don't even want to screen them out, as they do engage people and they do keep people around.
Successful pages run by bots can make a bit of money, Ophir says. The fake post about Manja I told you about was like 25,000 times and shared over 1,000. That engagement, he says, then encourages social media sites to share more content like it with more fans, even if it's fake.
Maybe like a few of them will get a few likes, but then 1 or 2 of them will get 100, 200, like up to the thousands of likes just because they somehow hit.
So I asked this resident expert what Bills Mafia can do.
Wait before we act upon our emotions, right? That means we don't have to comment on everything we see online. We don't have to share it with our family and friends before we double check that it's true. So in that way, we don't stop the phenomenon per se, but we kind of reduce the impact of it or the spread of it.
Say hello to Sora 2, the newest AI video technology coming from OpenAI.
It's very similar to ChatGPT. The only difference, the major difference to the user is the end result is a video instead of a piece of text.
Siwei Liu, University of Buffalo co-director of the Center for Information Integrity, says it's some of the most realistic AI video tech coming to the market.
The quality based on the demos shared by OpenAI was another 1 or 2 notches higher than the first generation. So it becomes more realistic and more convincing.
So right now, Sora requires a code in order to get into the app. It's not just available to the general public quite yet. But what we can do is use Google Veo. It's a similar technology to generate AI-generated videos.
So I asked it to create a video of a news reporter in snow.
And voila, it took about 45 seconds for Veo to create this video. So let's see what it came up with.
This free version does not include sound, but it's pretty reminiscent of a snowstorm any reporter could have reported on in real life.
The snow mound right next to me.
Professor Liu says that this new tech means you'll have to be extra vigilant when you're scrolling on social media.
To be able to use this kind of tools, everyone, truly social media users, we should have this awareness kind of wired in our brain, not to be easily taken away by what we are seeing or listening.
It is rather haunting to stand outside this fence and
look upon the gates where people once joyously passed through to see the belugas and the other creatures here at Marineland. But now the tale coming out of here is shockingly sad.
As the long ago jingle once happily sang, there was a time when everyone loved Marineland. But beneath the iconic tower sign, the We Go line no longer drops tourists off to this once popular attraction, which began running into problems 6 years ago when the Canadian government passed a law making it illegal to use whales and dolphins in entertainment shows or keep them in captivity. Its business model hampered. The park eventually closed. Marineland floated a plan to send the remaining belugas to a park in China, but the Canadian government last week denied it, reasoning that to allow the animals to be captive and perform there would fly in the face of their prohibition on that practice here. This drone footage, captured just 3 months ago by the CBC, shows staff caring for and feeding the remaining 30 belugas, which a source told a Canadian publication costs $2 million a month, money the park no longer has, and in its appeal to Ottawa said if there's none forthcoming, the belugas, as was put in the request for emergency funds, face the devastating decision of euthanasia. So far, the request has been denied, with Canada's Ministry of Fisheries telling Marineland the fact that Marineland has not planned for a viable alternative despite raising these whales in captivity for many years does not place the onus on the Canadian government to cover your expenses. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford today told reporters he's asking Ottawa to reconsider.
I find it ironic, the federal government saying we aren't issuing any permits, but it's your problem. Okay, something doesn't sound right there.
Others are calling on his Ontario provincial government to step in and seize the animals in order to save them.
As talks continue, we'll try and update you on any developments that may occur. On your side in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.
Scott and Mary Alice, a closed until further notice sign is on one of the doors here at this McDonald's on East Main Street. Investigators in Chautauqua County believe what happened here last night was an accident. Officials say just before 10:30 last night, multiple 911 calls came in reporting an explosion inside. We spoke to Chief Josh Myers. He's with the Fredonia Fire Department. He says when an employee pulled out one of the grills to clean behind it, as they normally would, a gas line detached. That gas was then ignited by another grilling unit, sparking a flash fire. Chief Myers said if safety precautions weren't in place inside this McDonald's, there could have been a much different outcome.
Excessive flow indicators that's in line in the gas line, so that worked as it should, right? It shut that line off. The fire did activate the fire sprinkler system, so that did its job and put any remaining fire out. So the safety mechanisms and measures that they have worked as they should.
A statement from the owner and operator of this McDonald's reads in part, "We are incredibly grateful that our customers and employees are all safe. We appreciate the swift response of the Fredonia Fire Department, whose efforts alongside our safety systems helped contain the fire quickly." Now, according to the fire department, this building sustained $15,000 worth of damage. Underside in Fredonia, Courtney Courtwright, Channel 2 News.
It was supposed to be a major bust. A 2020 raid that federal prosecutors called a crippling blow to one of Western New York's biggest drug trafficking rings.
As a result of the tremendous efforts of those agencies, those law enforcement agencies, 4 individuals who are part of a transcontinental drug trafficking organization that stretched from Buffalo to Los Angeles have been arrested.
Police said they seized cocaine, fentanyl, guns, and cash, all led by Erie County Sheriff's Chief of Narcotics DJ Granville and his Narcotics and Intelligence Unit. But what officers didn't know that night was that they were the ones being watched. Security cameras inside a home on Grimes Street captured what a federal judge later called, quote, damning evidence of unlawful conduct by law enforcement officers. A federal judge said those cameras showed Granville and his team entering parts of the home they were not legally authorized to search, and later allegedly staging evidence to justify it. This court finds Detective Granville's conduct to be an egregious violation of the Fourth Amendment. Judge Kenneth Schroeder wrote, court records show Granville claimed he found a utility bill linking the suspect, David Burgeon, to the upstairs apartment. But defense attorneys argue Granville put it there himself. They point to a hidden video, not available to the public but described in these court records, that shows Granville holding a white envelope in his hand, rifling through a trash bag, and then walking away without the envelope. The utility bill later turned up on top of an open garbage can, conveniently linking Burgin to the space that police had no warrant to search. Judge Schroeder wrote, quote, "It is this court's opinion that Government Exhibit 11 is a staged photograph because of the way the various papers are juxtaposed and too convenient in the context of the issue at hand." We asked NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos whether he was surprised that the drugs and guns found in the search were thrown out of court as illegally seized evidence.
If true, if a photograph was staged and was part of the application for a search warrant, then that would be hugely problematic for law enforcement, and it'd also be incredibly rare. You don't normally have that kind of black and white evidence.
The problem started earlier that night when Granville led officers up a stairwell to the second floor, even though their warrant only covered the lower front unit. Court records show he told the court it was a split-second decision for officer safety, but a judge said the area was well lit under a streetlight. The dispute led to what's called a Franks hearing, which is a rare hearing where a judge decided whether evidence should be suppressed. The drugs and guns found upstairs were all thrown out as illegally seized evidence.
Criminal defense attorneys like me talk about suppression motions all the time. But if we're being honest, most of us have only won these maybe a handful of times. They're very difficult to win because judges just don't like throwing out main pieces of evidence against a criminal defendant. They want the government to have their day in court. So these are very difficult motions to win, and they're very rarely granted.
And the case only gets stranger. Court documents show someone used whiteout to change the search warrant, removing the words lower front. The county judge who signed the warrant, Kenneth Case, was called to testify. He denied altering the document, even though one of Granville's detectives testified that the judge did it himself. In the end, judges threw out nearly all of the evidence, and prosecutors dropped 13 of the 14 charges against Burgin. Once facing 15 years to life in prison, he's now expected to plead guilty to a single count of cocaine possession and could walk free with time served. Federal Judge Richard Arcara ruled that law enforcement acted recklessly and with gross disregard for Burgin's constitutional rights and said Granville's actions were, quote, particularly egregious. The case could have implications for Granville's career, as well as other drug cases.
A law enforcement officer caught planting evidence can consider his or her career effectively over. And what's worse, what usually happens is as soon as a law enforcement officer is found to have done this, defense attorneys like me start going through our files to see, hey, was this guy involved in any of my other cases? And then even more motions will come out challenging all of his prior cases that he was involved in.
Granville declined to comment for this story, but Chris Horvatitz, Sheriff John Garcia's spokesman, said in a written statement that the sheriff had no comment on the judge's decision to throw out most of the evidence, quote, beyond saying that we respect both it and the rule of law. We are also aware that this investigation has resulted in the conviction of David Burgin, though we should add that that was only on one count, as the other 13 original charges were dropped. On your side in Buffalo, Charlie Speck, Channel 2 News.
Always have some water nearby. Always do it on a non-windy day. Clear the space around you. Those dry leaves that have fallen, that's all just extra fuel for the fire. That's why this time of year it can be so dangerous.
The Gettsville Fire Company public information officer says this burn ban should be taken seriously. Storm Team 2 meteorologist Jennifer Stanonis explains what led to this burn ban. She says this July through September, the region saw very little rainfall.
It was the driest on record in 145 years at the Buffalo Airport. So this is something that happens over time, and that's what we've seen. So now we have expanded our area. Now most of Western New York into northern Pennsylvania, most of our area is now under severe drought conditions.
Before you even have a fire, you should be checking with your municipality. It might look nice out, it may have just rained, but there could be a burn ban in effect for certain types of fires that you aren't aware about. So before you burn, always check with local authorities.
He says while small contained fires are allowed, you should consider your neighbor's safety. Fire officials warned that even a single ember in a brush pile can spark a dangerous fire.
But you're also putting your community at risk because you can't control where the fire goes. The burn bans are in effect because when a fire spreads in this type of climate with this weather, it spreads much, much quicker than people realize. It only takes seconds for secondary, tertiary fires to pop up.
With another failed vote today in the U.S. Senate, this time on a Democratic alternative plan to end the federal government shutdown with those disputed proposed revisions in health care insurance funding, the effect of that government funding deadlock now felt for some Internal Revenue Service staffers working out of the Apple Tree Business Park in Cheektowaga or the federal office building on Elmwood Avenue in downtown Buffalo. Furlough notices went out to an undetermined number of local IRS employees, some tax services specialists in call centers. Nationwide, about half or over 30,000 of the agency's 75,000 workers were furloughed as the agency starts to run out of its government-allocated resources.
Furloughs are temporary conditions where during a shutdown, there are just some positions where the agency deems that there is no funding available for them to continue working. And so the agencies make the decision that they are furloughed, and that would mean that they would be at home for the duration of the shutdown.
Ironically, before the shutdown, the IRS was in the process of rehiring some staffers who had been actually laid off months ago or took early resignations, and even hiring new workers to rehabilitate the agency with new IT systems and a new workforce.
They are trying to hire more people to be in these call centers to answer calls, because if they don't, they can see that there could be a lower level of phone support and that more calls as a result could go unanswered.
And that extra assistance may also be needed for a new tax filing season with tax changes under the One Big Beautiful bill.
Is it kind of a double whammy in that respect?
It really is. Any filing season, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that all of the changes to the tax code reflect the forms that taxpayers are going to be receiving. And especially now with the One Big Beautiful bill, there's a lot of changes. Many of them go into effect this filing season.
Lauren, simply put, Common Council members are going to reach out to all of the owners of these buildings to see what the plan is. At this afternoon's Community Development Committee, Council member Mitch Nowakowski, who's one of the council members leading this effort, talked about the importance of these buildings not sitting empty. There are 16 closed Rite Aids in Buffalo all over the city, and they total more than 173,000 square feet. Some of the buildings already have for lease signs up. Nowakowski talked about one he's particularly concerned about already.
I have a lot of problems with the structure that is in my district on Broadway and Bailey. You see it used as a parking lot for parties. I see garbage, I see refuse, nefariousness happening, and ultimately a large block that's left in despair. And then ultimately one of the most impoverished areas in Broadway, Bailey in the city of Buffalo is left without a pharmacy.
As far as reuse goes, the city's suggesting things like medical or urgent care facilities, community service hubs, and breaking the stores up into smaller spaces for small businesses. The next step is for the city to do an inventory of the buildings so potential buyers will know where they stand and what they're getting into. On your side, Kelly Dudzik, Channel 2 News.
Hey there, good morning. The consent order issued by the DEC outlines extensive and chronic failures by Great Lakes Cheese to manage its discharges into Issawa Creek. DEC Commissioner Amanda Lefton does not mince words when describing the impact of the discharge incident in Issawa Creek back in August.
We saw a die-off of many species, actually all the species within Issawa Creek.
And the DEC's investigation has given more details about what exactly went wrong when on August 29th, a discharge by Great Lakes Cheese led to a die-off of everything within a several-mile portion of the creek. Essentially, it was a complete failure of the wastewater treatment capabilities within the Great Lakes Cheese facility.
So I think we saw a couple of specific incidents that really got us to this point. So in the August timeframe leading up to this incident, for instance, we saw a large amount of fluid going into their digester that shouldn't have been there.
According to the 31-page consent order that was issued Monday by the DEC, the department paints a picture of systemic operational and reporting failures within the plant. 18 specific violations were identified, including an inspection of the plant on June 5th, which identified that the seal of the jet pump for the membrane bioreactor aeration system had failed and was leaking, and nutrient levels skyrocketed beyond what the plant's discharge permit allows. Biochemical oxygen demand was 27,400% over its legal limit. Ammonia levels were more than 3,200% over the limit, and the amount of oxygen in the creek after the discharge was 96% below the standard level. Essentially, oxygen had been stripped from the creek. So what's the penalty? Great Lakes Cheese has to pay a $475,000 fine and make significant upgrades to the facility. One of those upgrades being,
We've now have them install things like catch basins so they could divert that fluid from going to the digester to make sure that there isn't any reoccurring issue.
And while some might think that the monetary fine is not enough, it's not the only fine the company will face. The DEC will also be issuing a natural resource damage claim against Great Lakes Cheese. That penalty will try to quantify the cost to restore and replace all the wildlife that was killed in the creek.
What we are requiring them to do is to actually do the monitoring for us to then understand how we can quantify what that loss is.
How do you put, a price tag on just all that wildlife? What's the science behind that?
So understanding how many different, what the species mortality was is sort of the first step. And that's why you sort of reference those aspects of the consent order that are helping us to understand what those are and helping to support that for us. The next step from there is then understanding how to put a price tag behind it.
Great Lakes Cheese has a lengthy statement about the consent order. We have that posted right now on our website, but they did say in part that they apologize for everyone that was affected by the incident. On your side, Nate Benson, Channel 2 News.
The Metro Game Day Express for $5 each way has been a popular option for fans going to Bills games. While the new Buffalo Bills Stadium is still under construction, a site for the transportation hub has been chosen.
It is going to be on the corner of Abbott Road up the southwestern side, and it's just basically going to be a designated area where people know this is where you can pick up and drop off and get dropped off from the bus.
Specifically east of Abbott Road on the side of the current stadium, close to the corner with Southwestern Boulevard. There is already a paid parking lot close to Prohibition. The new transportation hub with the covering will be the main location for drop-off and pickup. The NFTA is ready.
We want to make sure that we do this correctly and do it correctly the first time, because we want to make sure that we are providing the service, but also making sure that the service that we have around the city is not going to lack.
The hub is required under the CBA between the team, county, and state. It must be within a quarter of a mile from the new stadium.
With the community benefits agreement, I'm assuming, based on what you were saying also, you had that Game Day Express to get workers there, but also people from the inner city who just want to go to the game and they don't have transportation. This is a way for them to get there.
We want to make sure that everyone is able to not just go there to work, but to go there to be able to cheer on the Bills, because that's something that brings us together as Buffalonians.
On your side, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.